We have all lived through it. Someone bumps into you at the coffee shop. Their caramel macchiato takes flight, lands squarely on your freshly dry-cleaned white shirt, and all they offer is a quick, breathless, "Oh, sorry," before disappearing into the crowd like a ninja of irresponsibility. You stand there, dripping, stunned, and wondering if sorry is supposed to serve as both an apology and dry cleaner reimbursement. That single moment, as trivial as it feels, actually reveals a much bigger ethical dilemma. Is simply saying "I'm sorry" ever enough to right a wrong? The real purpose of apologizing. At its most basic level, an apology is meant to serve as a moral transaction. It's not a casual nicety designed to make the wrongdoer feel better. It's supposed to serve as the first step in repairing a fractured relationship. Ethical experts, moral philosophers, and psychologists have all emphasized that a real apology is not simply a matter of words, it's an act of moral responsibility. In fact, studies from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and the University of California, Berkeley have demonstrated that people who receive genuine apologies, especially when combined with some form of restitution, experience not only emotional relief, but measurable physiological relaxation. Their heart rates drop, their facial muscles relax, and their bodies literally breathe a sigh of relief. Apparently, the human body knows when an apology is genuine before the mind even catches up. People often assume apologies are offered because the wrongdoer feels guilty. In reality, many apologies are offered simply because the person feels socially obligated, legally cornered, or desperate to avoid further conflict. Ethically speaking, these motivations fall flat. A real apology must come from a place of genuine accountability, rather than a desire for personal relief or escape from consequences. What actually makes an apology good? Over decades, scholars like Aaron Lazar and Gary Chapin have dissected the anatomy of meaningful apologies. They explain that a truly effective apology involves several indispensable ingredients. The first is acknowledgement. This means taking clear, unambiguous ownership of the specific harm caused. Unfortunately, many people fail right at this first step, opting for foggy statements like, "mistakes were made," which sound more like political soundbites than sincere admissions of fault. Without pinpointing the actual harm and taking personal responsibility, an apology is nothing more than empty words floating in ethical limbo. The second crucial ingredient is the expression of genuine remorse. This is not about squeezing out crocodile tears or producing a dramatic sigh. It's about honestly conveying regret for the suffering inflicted. The third ingredient is making a sincere commitment to change one's behavior so the mistake won't be repeated. And finally, there's restitution, the often ignored part where one takes real, concrete actions to repair the damage done. The epidemic of bad apologies. Despite the clarity of these steps, we are all constantly bombarded with apologies that fail to meet these basic standards. One of the most infamous examples is the backhanded, "I'm sorry you feel that way." This gem shifts the focus from the offender's actions to the victim's emotions, as though the real issue is your inconvenient sensitivity rather than their behavior. Another classic is the "sorry, but," where any words following "but" effectively nullify the entire apology. Conditional apologies and blame-shifting tactics have become so prevalent that they practically constitute their own genre of modern communication failure. These weak apologies are not just annoying, they actively erode trust. Rather than fostering reconciliation, they function as a form of moral escape artistry, allowing the wrongdoer to dodge real accountability while appearing superficially remorseful. When apologies move from personal to public, things get even murkier when apologies move beyond private interactions and enter the public sphere. Corporations, politicians, and governments often issue apologies that are so carefully sanitized by legal teams and PR consultants that they end up acknowledging absolutely nothing. Phrases like, "we regret any inconvenience," are masterpieces of non-commitment, designed to mollify public outrage while avoiding any admission of legal liability. Yet research consistently shows that when organizations take genuine responsibility, couple their apologies with concrete reform, and follow through on promises of accountability, public trust is not only restored but often strengthened. In other words, sincerity combined with action works, even for large institutions. Apologizing for systemic and historical wrongs. The ethics of apology become even more complex when dealing with historical or systemic injustices, such as those involving colonialism, genocide, slavery, or institutional abuse. These apologies are not simply about one person offending another. They involve deep, long-standing wounds often carried across generations. Scholars like Cecil Faber have argued that victims, ideally, should accept genuine apologies in such cases. However, this suggestion has been met with substantial criticism for placing an unfair emotional burden on victims, implying they have some moral obligation to forgive simply because an apology was offered. The reality is that victims should never feel pressured into forgiveness. Ethical apologies must be given freely by the offender, without the expectation or demand of absolution. The moral burden always rests with the person or institution that committed the harm, not with the individual or community that suffered it. Apologies that actually heal. One of the most promising arenas for ethical apology in action is restorative justice. In this framework, apologies are not standalone performances, but integral components of a larger healing process. Offenders engage directly with victims, take full responsibility for their actions, and commit to making amends. This approach has been widely studied and adopted in countries like New Zealand, Norway, and even various jurisdictions within the United States. Research consistently shows that victims who participate in restorative justice programs report higher levels of emotional closure, satisfaction, and healing than those who see offenders punished through traditional criminal justice systems. Restorative justice does not just focus on the act of apology, but weaves it into a broader web of accountability and healing. The strange new world of AI apologies. Believe it or not, even artificial intelligence has entered the apology business. Virtual assistants like Alexa and Siri will readily say "I'm sorry" when they misinterpret a command or fail to answer a question. But these so-called apologies raise a fascinating ethical dilemma. AI, being non-sentient, lacks the capacity for moral agency. Its apologies are nothing more than programmed linguistic reflexes. Scholars caution that unless AI apologies lead to actual systemic correction implemented by their human programmers, they remain ethically meaningless. As AI becomes more deeply integrated into decision-making processes that affect real lives, the question of who bears moral responsibility for its failures grows increasingly urgent. Splitting personal and public responsibility. Modern ethical debates have led to proposals like the two-phase apology model, which separates personal and public aspects of apology. In this framework, offenders first engage directly with individuals they have harmed, taking full ownership and offering personal restitution. Then a second phase involves a broader public acknowledgement, often mediated by neutral third parties or truth commissions. This model preserves the victim's autonomy while ensuring societal recognition of wrongdoing, as demonstrated by the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission's efforts to confront the atrocities of apartheid. Why we laugh at bad apologies, but should not always. The reason bad apologies have become such rich material for memes and comedy is precisely because they fail so spectacularly at their ethical mission. Celebrity apologies frequently fall into this trap, offering weepy confessions that focus on letting down my fans, rather than acknowledging specific harmful actions. Politicians master the art of non-apology apologies with phrases like, "If anyone was offended by my actions," which is a masterclass in dodging responsibility. These types of statements are not just comically inadequate, they are ethically bankrupt. The reason these hollow apologies feel so frustrating is because they violate a core moral principle. The cost of an apology should fall on the person making it, not on the person receiving it. A real apology requires the offender to accept vulnerability, incur discomfort, and often make some form of meaningful sacrifice. Otherwise, it's just empty air. How ethical apologies strengthen relationships. In our personal lives, the stakes for apologies are just as high. Within intimate relationships, a genuine apology can serve as the cornerstone for rebuilding trust and emotional intimacy. The act of sincerely acknowledging one's mistake and demonstrating a commitment to change is one of the most profound ways to express love, respect, and care. Conversely, evasive or shallow apologies often erode trust more deeply than the original offense. The same dynamic holds true in the workplace. Research shows that leaders who sincerely apologize for mistakes and take steps to prevent recurrence often enjoy higher levels of trust and respect from their teams. Even in high-stakes fields like healthcare, full disclosure and sincere apologies following medical errors lead to fewer lawsuits and greater patient trust. And there you have it, the wild, complicated, and surprisingly hilarious world of apologies. If you found this video helpful, make sure to smash that like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, stay curious, stay kind, and if you mess up, apologize like you mean it. See you next time.